guys back to another episode of the AWM NFL podcast. My name is Riccardo Stewart. I have the privilege of being the host of this show, and I'm joined by my friends and my coworkers here at AWM. We got Sam Acho, we call him the mayor because he runs things. We got Zach Miller, we call him the truth because he's so knowledgeable. And then we got the professor. One, because he knows a lot, but he has the ability to be able to teach the knowledge that he has. And so we are going to talk today, as we do a lot, about multi-generational wealth, right? We sit with clients, we meet with clients, and that is something that is talked about. How can I have multi-generational wealth? Like, I don't want to just have enough money for me and my family. Like, I want to be able to have money where my kids, and the kids are taken care of. And so we're talking about people who are making 30, 40, 50, 100, even more $1 million, and particularly the NFL athlete, that you have the opportunity to create this because of what you've been able to do on the field. But what happens is, like all of us, we watch the 30 for 30, we read the articles, we listen to the podcast, and we think about people going broke. Our job is not to just prevent our clients from going broke. Like that is like a bare minimum. The job for a family office is to be able to allow you to take the resources that you have and be able to create multi-generational wealth. And everyone thinks it's easy, and it's not. It's like people watching you play in the NFL on Sunday and going, man, that's easy. Give me a ball. Let's go out in the front yard. It's like, nah, bruh. It's not easy. Very, very few people actually made it to the NFL. I happen to be on a show right now with 3 guys who have. And so we're going to talk about what are the 4 rules of building and creating multi-generational wealth. First, you got to have some cheddar. You got to have some cheese. And so where does money play in this, Sam?
Well, the simple fact is that money is just a tool to help you accomplish your desires and pay for the things or people that you care about. I've heard it said when I was going to the NFL, people said, man, Sam, don't change. Don't let the money change you. Don't let all that fame change you. And I was scared. I was like, well, I don't know. I've never had this kind of money before. Will it change me? Will it not? And a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, a guy who had played multiple years in the NFL, I was at an event with him. And I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know if this money will change me. And he gave me this great reminder. He said that money is just a magnifier. That's all that it does. Money and fame, success, it's a magnifier. It magnifies who you already are and what you already were doing in the past. And so if there was some good, it would just magnify the good. If there was some shady stuff, it would magnify the shady stuff as well. At the end of the day, money is a tool to accomplish the goals that you care about and pay for the priorities that you have.
I love it. It's funny you said that. Don't let the money change you. I don't know if you guys remember in the 90s when Dion was or Coach Prime, my bad, when Dion was rapping and he had that song, Must Be the Money. And he's like, people say money gonna change me. He goes, money did change me. It changed my banking account. It changed my address. and so money does change you a little bit. So, and here's the thing, people on the outside, they look at athletes and they go, how do they have all this money and they don't do this and this and this yet? But the reality of it is money's not enough to build multi-generational wealth because there's a lot of people who have money and they're miserable. There's a lot of people who have money. They have horrible relationships. There are a lot of people who have had money and don't have that money now. So you got to have money. And the next thing I'm going to say that you need to have knowledge. And so I'm going to go to the truth here because that goes hand in hand. So what part does knowledge play in building multi-generational wealth?
So knowledge is massively important. One thing I'll say first, though, is the 30 for 30 broke, that whole thing. It's like its 15-year anniversary. I'm still looking for someone, so hit me up if you want to produce this, but essentially the opposite of 30 for 30 broke, the following the families that create multi-generational wealth from their earnings in the NFL. Like, that's the documentary I want to see. Obviously, they're not going to make it because no one wants to watch success. They always want to watch failures. But how do you avoid failures? One of those tools is the knowledge. So the knowledge is just what you can recall and remember that you can explain, summarize, compare. It's all those facts, stories, frameworks, concepts, opinions, formulas, and all those beliefs that are in your head. And so you have to have those things. It's massively important to creating generational wealth, but it's not enough. Even if I took all the knowledge I have, went back in time and gave it to myself at 21 years old, it's actually not enough to have just the knowledge. You have to have what Jeff will talk about. You have to have the skills or the skill set to implement it.
Leading the witness strike.
I was going to say, Jeff, would you add to any of that?
Yeah, I like to use analogies, right? So on the football side, knowledge is like memorizing the entire playbook and doing all the film study. Cool. You know what it looks like on paper, right? But Rick, as you're going to team me up in a second, like what is knowledge without actually going out and practicing it?
I am going to tee you up because what I know is the math is still not mathing. Money plus knowledge does not equal multi-generational wealth. It's money, it's knowledge, and then we have to add skill. And so, Professor, speak on it.
Yeah, skill is really something that all athletes know. And the first thing I'm going to say is like skill is not talent. So don't mix those two up, right? Talent might be like what you're born with, like what you inherited from your parents. Skill is all the thousands of hours of practice, deliberate practice and feedback, making it look easy on Sundays, right? You talked about earlier in the podcast, right? It looks easy. I can go pick up a ball and do it. No, you can't. We put in 10,000 plus hours doing the smallest little thing over and over and over again to develop our skills, right? So we think of those as technical skills, right? The footwork for me when I was punting, like every little movement I made, every millimeter was exactly planned when I was punting a football. And that's a skill that I develop over time. When it comes to multi-generational wealth, kind of like Zach said, you can have the knowledge. You can have the knowledge that stock markets go up and down over time, but do you have the skill to not freak out when stock markets go down, right? And it's going to happen probably 10 plus times over your lifetime and 10 plus times over your kid's lifetime. Do you have the skill to stick with it, right? And the coolest thing about skill is that's also what you teach to your next generation, right? You can teach them all the knowledge, but what your kids are going to remember is seeing you apply the knowledge, right? That's what they're going to learn. And that's what's going to keep the generations going and going and going with this wealth that you created.
Good. Zach, would you have anything that you want to say to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than someone who's super athletic and they have all this talent, but like doesn't have the hard work. It's like that wasted potential. You can have the knowledge, but unless you develop the skill set, and then like Jeff was alluding to, the discipline, and we'll talk about that, the discipline of making good investments over long periods of time, controlling your spending, all of that, and we'll get to that. But it's another part where that skill set, and you're not born with it. And unless you come from a family with money, it's very hard to learn. If you don't come from money, you're just not going to get the skill set. Even if you have some of the knowledge.
That's good. That's good. So the math is still not mathing. We got one more piece here. You got to have money plus knowledge plus skill. And the last thing that you need, and Zach's already talked about it, is discipline. I mean, you think about you as an athlete and the discipline that it takes to do what you've done. I remember getting just to college, and I remember something simple as this. My head coach being like, hey, you got to start getting up earlier. We got to get into the weight room. Like, you'd never lifted weights at 6 a.m. when we were coming out of high school. And I remember the first thing he said is the first thing in the morning you need to do is stand up. As soon as your alarm goes off, stand up in the morning, as opposed to sitting in the bed, hitting the snooze. And the discipline of that, I mean, that was 24 years later. That's the first thing I do when I'm getting up early in the morning is I just get up. I get up, which gives me the opportunity to not go back into the bed. Okay, that's something small. Jeff talked about punting. Zach can talk about route running. Sam can talk about the bag that he has when it comes to rushing the pass rusher. Those things might have been born within them, the talent, but the actual skill to be able to develop those things, that's made them the NFL players that they were. And it's the same thing on the financial side. Zach, you begin to allude some things on discipline. I want you to talk a little bit more about that. What does discipline look like in building multi-generational wealth?
I mean, the things you can control. Discipline is having, using that knowledge, using that skill set to then either say no to certain things. That's a discipline. Saying no to even family, saying no to things that aren't important to you. Like those are all the discipline it takes to create generational wealth, or just, the right team around you, having the discipline to hold them accountable. And then on yourself, like, am I going to be disciplined to follow my plan? That might sound like easy. Oh, I got this plan laid out. My kids will be wealthy. My kids' kids will be wealthy. But then am I going to execute this plan? Am I not going to go off on and do my own thing? Like buy things I shouldn't be buying, wasting money on things like that. I mean, because if you follow the plan, it's just like follow the game plan of the game, run the plays, and hopefully it works out in the end. If you just go off script, you don't know what can happen. So the discipline to hold yourself accountable too, hold your team accountable, all those little decisions along the line, are they above the line or below the line? Discipline's very, very yes or no. Like you're either doing it or you're not. It's no different than when you're at practice. You're either putting in the work, you're not. You're either working your tail off in the weight room. And only you really know that, like, because not everyone's always watching you. It's the one thing, like, if you're out on your own, like, are you making the right decisions? It's the same thing with money, because at the end of the day, like, you're either going to have it or you're not. Your kids are going to be super wealthy or they're not.
Sam, I see you nodding your head. And so I want you to get the last word in as you begin to talk about discipline as it relates to building multi-generational wealth. What are some of the things that come to your mind that, like, hey, I have to say this?
How you do anything is how you do everything. So we talk about wanting to be disciplined when it comes to our finances, but are you disciplined when it comes to what you eat? Discipline when it comes to how you study? Discipline when it comes to how you prepare? So much of we are integrated. We are one person, one human. And so, like we've been talking about, it takes, yes, money, but it also takes skill, but it also takes knowledge, but it also takes discipline. If you don't have those three things integrated, you won't be whole. And so as I'm listening to this conversation, nodding my head, and everything that Zach's saying, everything that Riccardo's saying, everything that Jeff's saying, I'm reminded of myself. Oh, I want to be an expert. I need to be disciplined as I parent my children. I need to be disciplined as I prepare for different things, as I do the different work that I do. I am integrated. I'm a human being. I'm one human. And so as I'm listening, I'm learning and nodding my head, because I'm like, oh yeah, this applies to all facets and aspects of life, not just as an athlete or a coach or an advisor or a strategist. This applies to us as parents. Some of us are children. Some of us are our colleagues. And then ultimately, as we talk about often, it applies to our wealth and our money and our future and generations. And so how you do anything is how you do everything. We are integrated. We are human. We are one. It takes knowledge, but it also takes skill, and it takes the discipline, 3 in 1.
Well said. So I'll say this, the maths now. Money plus knowledge, thank you, Jeff, plus skill, thank you, Zach, plus discipline, thank you, fellas. That gives you the opportunity to set yourself up to build multi-generational wealth. As always, we will tell you any resources you need on that. If you want us to elaborate more on that, we would love to send you some resources. You can shoot us a text at 602-989-5022. Again, that's 602-989-5022.
The information in this podcast is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision.